So we're going to start our afternoon session with a personal insight from Adam Corre, who's a dyspraxia advocate. And he's going to be talking to us on the theme of workplace experiences from a neurodivergent point of view. So some really practical examples that we're looking to see in this. So we hand over now to Adam. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and welcome to my presentation. I know that some of you might have had heavier lunches than others, so I didn't want anyone to fall asleep this afternoon. So I thought I'd start off by showing you 3 pictures, and maybe in the chat or in the Q&A bit, I'm not sure what's best, people can type their answers in, and I just want you to think about how these 3 pictures might be connected and how might they be linked to neurodiversity and dyspraxia in particular. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to do that. Off you go. I can't actually see the chat box here. I can see the Q&A bit.
I think the chat should also appear in your bottom toolbar, Adam.
Oh, thank you.
If you need anything called out, just say the word.
Yeah, maybe if you could read out some of the answers that have come in, because I can't quite see.
I think everyone's rather puzzled. It's quite mysterious. We haven't gotten any submissions yet.
Okay. They're all unique, interesting. Yeah, so I mean, the way that I'm fascinated by behavioral economics and by advertising in general, and I think that these 3 products are all linked because they have all been reframed or rebranded in some way. The image on the bottom right there is actually Frederick the Great, the King of Prussia, and he rebranded the potato. It was a product that people didn't find particularly appetizing at the time. He couldn't get people to eat them, and he effectively rebranded it. He declared it a royal vegetable, and actually got some guards to protect his own patch. So it created a kind of much more desirable product. People started kind of coming in and stealing them. And obviously, the one top right, we've got the iPod there and the Walkman, and obviously the whole rebranding there, the whole reframing of the way that we view music. 1,000 songs in your pocket, totally unique, and something that fundamentally changed the way that we consume music. And the picture at the bottom left is a fish that was not particularly appetizing looking fish called the Patagonian toothfish, which fishermen just couldn't sell for love or money back in the day, until it was reframed and it was rebranded by a fisherman who called it Chilean sea bass. And you could then start getting that fish in posh restaurants and in hotels for about $40. So these are all products that have been reframed, rebranded in some way. And I think that there has been a big push to reframe, rebrand the way that people view neurodiversity and the way that people approach this topic that has been very much based on focusing on people's strengths and their challenges, but also framing it in a way that is part of a natural variation in the way that people's brains work. And I think that dyspraxia in particular, though, has been kind of left behind to a certain extent. And I don't think that it's as well understood. And I think that part of what I do is kind of advocate on behalf of myself, share my experiences. I talk it to the civil service and to other organisations, including sort of London universities and that sort of thing. And I try and kind of share my experiences of the workplace and how I think people like myself can really thrive. So if I move on to the next slide, just give you a kind of very brief overview of dyspraxia. It can affect your fine and gross motor coordination skills. It can affect speech for some people. And it's very different to other kind of motor disorders like cerebral palsy or stroke, that kind of thing. And some of the challenges in particular have been focused on memory, planning, concentration, that sort of thing. And these are kind of things which overlap with other examples of neurodiversity that we've learned about today. And obviously it doesn't affect people's intelligence, and a lot of the strengths are wide and are mixed, varied, but certainly I feel like I have very high levels of empathy. I think that in terms of creativity and innovation, that sort of thing, those are real strengths. I guess when the environment is not conducive to somebody like myself, it can be stressful. There can be real challenges around, as I say, planning, organisation, time management. You've got someone who's a bit late there, and obviously using sort of gross motor, fine motor skills, that sort of thing. So using something like a photocopying machine can be, for most people, pretty straightforward, but for some people can be quite a challenge. But when I talk about dyspraxia, I really want to kind of emphasise that, you know, this is my experience and my experience alone, and I speak for myself. My experiences of dyspraxia will be very different to other people with dyspraxia, and may well be very different to other people with dyspraxia in the workplace. And of course, so no two people are the same. It's really important that the focus is very much on the individual, and so really kind of keep that in mind as I'm kind of talking through this. So quite recently, actually, I did a strengths. I got my strengths profile through Genius Within, and I'm really grateful to kind of have that information. So you can see the real strengths there around creative skills, problem solving, and that kind of innovation that I think that all businesses, all companies need. There are some real challenges there in terms of like organisation, time management, and those are things that can often be bridged through coaching and through reasonable adjustments. And so when that environment is right, I think that the strengths can really kind of shine through there. And in terms of something that I've really learned through my experiences in the workplace, that I learned through a very kind of multi-sensory way. So being able to see and hear and observe in lots of different ways can have a huge impact on the way that I perform in a role. So the best teachers in schools, good teachers will show students videos. They'll show them different images. They'll show them. They'll be able to try things. They'll be getting that kind of constant feedback, and so they're kind of learning things in lots of different ways, multi-sensory way of learning. And I felt that that's had a huge impact on my performance in job roles. And I think that some of those things can be lost when there are pressures, when there are deadlines and that sort of thing. And so just giving me kind of verbal instructions can be sometimes not enough, and I'll often need to see and hear things more than others. But when that kind of environment is right, the strengths, I say, can really shine through. And I think a really good example of that was when I worked in an education environment, and I was teaching students, but the way that the organisation existed, it was kind of, the inclusiveness was sort of embedded within the culture of the company already. So when I was learning new skills, when I was training, I was getting constant feedback from people who were quite experienced. I was able to observe really experienced members of staff, so I was constantly seeing it, hearing it in different ways. There were images from textbooks, and I was learning through a textbook as well, through words and through pictures, and also the company kind of constantly giving out videos to members of staff. So I was getting this information in lots of different ways. And I think that, as I said before, the strengths really kind of shone through when the environment was right and when the support was in place. The strengths, as mentioned before, on that strength profile really came to the forefront. So on the left-hand side, this is just part of a very short advert that I put together for the company when they were struggling to actually recruit people for part-time roles, and they'd focused it a lot on their advertising on LinkedIn, and I sort of suggested that this would be a really perfect role for students, and so I put together a very different kind of advert for the company to attract new staff, and put it into the student union websites and across London, and the response rate was massive, and we managed to hire about 7 or 8 new members of staff from people who read that advert. And on the right-hand side was this is the way that notes were kind of taken at the time by teachers when they were recording student progress. And I kind of changed it. So I created a really simple box ticking system. So simplifying the process there for teachers to help them and save them time. And I guess those are just two examples of where I felt that I was able to really add value. And I think that some of the really key things here, for me anyway, were very much about being able to ask more questions, particularly when a new task is given or when I'm doing something that's unfamiliar. Being able to have that supportive environment, being safe to talk about it and to share the challenges as well as the real strengths that exist there. I think that the environment, I think that's been spoken about a lot, but the environment is really, really important. And so that, for me, working in a kind of quite quiet environment can make a big difference. And there has been in the past a huge difference in the quality of work that I've produced at home versus in a noisy office. And so I also think that sometimes new tasks can take me a bit longer to learn. And so I have been in environments where I've had that ability to just maybe start tasks a bit earlier than others. And I think that having that determination to succeed has made me a much more resilient person. And I think that the really key thing here is for anyone who's line managing somebody who's dyspraxic, or if you're in HR or whatever. And I think that you don't need to be an expert on dyspraxia. You don't need to know the ins and outs of the difference between fine and gross motor skills or whatever. I think that the emphasis, as we said, is very much on the individual. You need to know that person. And I think that the job demands environment can change over time and does change, whether that's from wherever a person's working from, or whether it's just the reasonable adjustments that existed at the start when somebody was first employed no longer is as effective as they were when I first started a job. So having that kind of review system in place, reviewing it every few months can make a big difference in terms of sustaining or building on somebody's performance in a job. And I think that the other things, the second point here, is not making assumptions. So I think it's really easy to think, oh, well, they're dyspraxic or dyslexic or whatever, and therefore they're going to be great at this, they're going to be good at this, they're going to struggle with this. And I think it kind of ties into that last point about, you need to know that individual, you need to know that person. Don't make assumptions until you speak to them, until you really get to know them. And this is just really as a final point, I'm slightly early here, but if you are managing somebody, if you have someone who's dyspraxic in your team, like with all these things, you are the conductor of an orchestra. And when somebody is somebody might be out of tune at one point, somebody may not be playing the same notes as the others in the team, but as long as everyone is in harmony, and I think that being able to create an environment where a team is in harmony, is together, I've seen the benefits that can offer through my personal experience, and through kind of learning more about this issue. I think that the benefits there can be enormous. If there are any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you for that. I think it's always very, very useful to hear the personal perspective on how these things that we're discussing are actually managed in the workplace. And I think you just mentioned a few points that we can take away from that. The simple things that for many people may appear to be very straightforward in an office, whether it's the photocopy machine or whatever else it may well be. The gross motor skills do come into play, and line managers, businesses really just need to be aware of the nuances that can cause some element of challenge for people. But I like the way you emphasize the environment. Again, that's been coming across quite regularly in these talks. how important it is to have the right environment in the workspace that enables people to actually be able to ask more questions and be a little bit more vocal. And you also mentioned how important it is to know the person. And we can't emphasize that enough, how important that is. So really helpful suggestions there, Adam. Thank you so much for that.
No problem. Thank you.